Welcome back, everybody. Today we delve into a bit of science that I ran across yesterday, if I remember correctly. It's the date of the article is actually the 13th, which is 2 days ago. I didn't see it until yesterday, but I read it, I pondered on it, and I thought, let's look at this together and see what we can learn. So, the title of it is humans may have descended from a pair that lived 200,000 years ago, which implies that experts are correct. Okay, number one, I have to say this title's not very well worded. You're left asking questions like, "What experts are correct? Who are they talking about here?" Um, but beyond that, let's get into the article itself. So they go on and they say all contemporary humans may be derived from a single couple who lived between 100 to 200,000 years ago, according to a new assessment. This assessment, of course, is based on DNA and researching different aspects of DNA, like mitochondrial DNA, that is passed down, and then extrapolating from that the history of the humans involved. But again, they come back and they say not only humans did they examine, but also 100,000 different species of animals they examined to see whether or not they could be traced back to a single couple of adults after what they call a terrible catastrophe that almost eradicated the human race. Now, what we're not being told is that the history of the human race is continually being upended by scientific research, not only in DNA, but archaeologically as well. Things like Topeki Gepi are cropping up. These old, vastly older than they should be, human settlements are suddenly upending everything that evolutionists believed about the development of the human race. So this is really just in line with that. So they say not just humans, right here, not just humans. I hate it when this does this. Right here. Not just humans, but 9 out of 10 animal species might have been descended from a single pair of creatures. And these, of course, are these what they call barcodes or DNA fragments that they examined that are outside the nucleus of live cells. Now, if you want to delve into microbiology and DNA and all of that, it's a vast and confusing field, and we're still sorting it out. Even though you'll see articles titled that we've mapped the entire human DNA, we haven't. We just like to tell ourselves that we have, and it also makes us look like we know more than we actually know. So, excuse me. Here we are again. 90% of all humans, of all animal species living now, 90% are the offspring of parents who gave birth at around the same time, fewer than 250,000 years ago. Now, what I want us to note here is now they're saying 250,000 years ago. Up here, they said 200,000 years ago. Here, they say anywhere between 100 to 200,000 years ago. Now, what's that tell us? Well, it tells us that they're not sure because they keep changing the dates around to try to fit it in. Because this doesn't fit in with the evolutionist theory of the development of life on Earth. It just doesn't fit it. Let's keep going. They, of course, were surprised by the outcome and tried his best to avoid coming to this result. Now, How is that scientific? I mean, science is all about like creating a hypothesis, right? Building out a hypothesis and then examining the data, testing the hypothesis against that data, and then no matter the results, if it supports the hypothesis, you accept it. But yet here we actually get an insight into what real so-called scientists are doing today. They have a preconceived notion of how things should be, and if the evidence contradicts that preconceived notion, they don't like it. And you'll see that later on in this article. So we see that it was researchers from the Rockefeller University and the University of Basel who presented, and they named them off here with Mark Steckel and research associate David Thaler. I'm not going to dwell too much on what all they delved into here, because we need to get to the point of the video. I don't want this to drag on and drag on. And again, they mentioned the mitochondrial DNA that's passed on from mothers generation to generation. And it reveals this lack of human uniqueness. Now, what does that phrase mean? Lack of human uniqueness. You'll see if you read this article that they go into this. I'm not even sure what to describe it. This socially acceptable definition of what it means to be human, and try to build on that. And that's just not science. That's bringing sociology into their examination of the mitochondrial DNA and the determination that we all came from two individuals to about 100 to 200,000 years ago. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't accept that we're all human beings. Don't want you to think that. Of course, we all descended from two human beings. Um, part of the problem is that, let's see here. Where am I going? This last sentence right here. We followed the conventional wisdom on human evolution in our research. We do not believe there was a single Adam or Eve, quote, in quotes, in the beginning. We do not have any dire scenarios in mind. Now, what is that? You know what that is that them putting a caveat on their own research, because guess what their research supports? The biblical story of creation, where there was a biblical Adam and Eve. Not 100 to 200,000 years ago, but roughly 6,000 years ago. That's what the DNA research continually is bringing up. Now, why did they get 100 to 200,000 years ago? Well, because that's what fits their paradigm. That's what fits what they think it should be. If you look at the archaeology that comes into play, and you look at the history of the human race, the written history of the human race, you can only go back about 6,000 years, period. So what we see here is just bias, plain and simple, interfering and hindering with a scientific investigation that actually leads them to the Bible. But they say, "Oh no, I don't want the Bible. I don't want that. I want to believe in evolution. I want to believe there's no God." And that's what it ultimately tends to. They hate the story of Genesis. Right here. They hate the story. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed in his nostrils the breath of life, and he became a living soul. And then he created Eve. And then later on, the human race does go through a great catastrophe called Noah's flood, in which Noah and his wife and his three sons and their three wives and the animals from the ark left the ark and repopulated the earth. Guess what that great catastrophe we just saw in the article would have been? I wonder. It's a shame. It's a shame that they just can't admit that they hate God and they hate the Bible And so all their scientific research is skewed by their own biases. That's the point of my video today. We're told today, trust the science. How can I trust the science when I see such obvious bias and such obvious misinterpretation of facts and such obvious disregard of the scientific method, but yet I'm supposed to trust the science? How does that work? Am I just supposed to take it on faith? Oh, wait, they hate faith too, unless it helps them. Do you see the double mindedness there? And the Bible clearly says a double minded man is unstable in all his ways. And that's what this leads to. And that's what's brought us to the problems we have today. We've ignored the Bible, we've ignored Genesis that sets the tone for the human race. You know, you and I have a purpose. We were created by God for his purposes, not our own. We're very self-centered, and that this kind of bias leads to that self-centeredness. We need to re-embrace the God of truth, the God of the Bible, in science, in history, in archaeology, in sociology, if we are ever going to solve the problems facing us today. That's the point of my video here on April 15th, 2022. Have a great day, and I hope you open your mind to the truth.